Okay, so today we are looking at making some buttercream icing, which is fantastic to go on top of fairy cakes, into a sandwich cake, and for decorating cakes as well. If you're getting a little bit more artistic, it can be coloured really easily. It's a really handy type of icing to work with. I'm making it with butter. It tastes best when made with butter, definitely. But one little trick that might be handy for anyone who might be doing some baking for someone who is lactose intolerant is margarine doesn't actually contain any dairy. So buttercream icing can be made with margarine. It doesn't taste quite as nice, but it does work. And it can be used then to, instead of cream, for any kind of desserts that you might be doing, so for filling a Swiss roll or a sandwich cake or something like that. So my general recipe for butter icing is twice the amount of sugar to butter. I am still actually working in ounces at the moment. I can post the recipe again in grams. So I'm only making a small amount of butter icing today, so I'm going to use about 2 ounces of butter and then about 4 ounces of icing sugar. So I'm going to mix my butter icing in a stand mixer. I'm going to use the balloon whisk attachment, so the one that looks like this. If you have a stand mixer, it is fantastic for butter icing because you can just set it up to mix and leave it mixing for as long as possible. It'll make it really nice light butter icing. If you only have an electric mixer or if you're mixing by hand, it does still work, just takes a lot longer. So I'm going to start off by mixing just my butter just to soften it up. Definitely try to take this out of the fridge before you start as well, just to soften it up. So once your butter has softened up and has started going nice and smooth, you can start to add your icing sugar. Again, if you're using a stand mixer, you can probably add in about 2 additions. If you're doing this by hand, I would add it in much smaller amounts. So I'd weigh it out in a bowl and then just sieve in 1 spoonful at a time as you are mixing. So I have used 2 ounces of butter, so I'm going to add 2 ounces of icing sugar now and then another addition of 2 ounces in a couple of minutes once it has mixed in. I am using a sieve to add my icing sugar. That went in a bit too quick. Because it tends to have some lumps in it, so it's important to sieve it as you're mixing it, as you're adding it, to remove any lumps. Okay, so my first quantity of icing sugar is mixed into my butter icing there. So I'm going to add the next bit, sieve it again, and then mix it again. And again, just to remember, when you're using an electric mixer, if you've added something like icing sugar, start on a really low speed until it starts to mix in so it doesn't poof everywhere on you. And then with butter icing, turn it up to full speed and mix it for about 4 or 5 minutes. So my butter icing has been mixing away there now for a couple of minutes. It's still quite stiff, so I'm actually going to add a tablespoon of milk to it just to loosen it off so that it'll be easy to pipe. You can also add any flavouring that you want to add at this stage. So I'm going to add a drop of vanilla extract. If you want to do lemon, if you want to do chocolate, any kind of flavour, you can add that at this stage. Notice it goes from this kind of buttery yellow colour to a much paler colour. That's how you know when it's ready. Now, so my butter icing has been mixing there for a good while. It kind of resembles almost like whipped cream at this stage. It's so soft and you can see it's gone pretty much white. So that's what you're looking for when you're making butter icing. Okay, so one really handy thing to be able to do with buttercream icing that we've made here is to be able to pipe it so that it looks well on top of a cupcake or on top of a sandwich cake. So a couple of things about piping bags, things like that. You can get disposable ones, but I have had so many of them burst out the side, so along the seam here on me, I've just given up on them. And to be honest, it's not a good idea for the environment either. So I would recommend a reusable piping bag, just to be sure that you wash it out and dry it out really well but when you're storing it, so that it doesn't go mouldy or anything like that. So I tend to store mine inside out after I've washed it to make sure it dries completely. The tip that I'm going to use today is this one here. So it is a 2D nozzle. It's kind of the best all-rounder for piping on top of cupcakes and things like that, and I think it's one of the easier ones to use. So that's the one I'm going to use today. If you are going to get really technical and all sorts of different decorations and stuff, you can get these attachment kind of holders for piping bags. So the idea is this goes inside your piping bag and then you can swap in and out your different tips without having to empty your whole piping bag. So it is a really handy little thing to have if you do a lot of piping. To fill your piping bag, you can see I have a glass here beside me. It's the handiest way, so make sure you've got your tip in, piping bag into your glass, and then pull it down over your glass. Try and pack it in as far as you can so you don't have any bubbles in your icing, because they'll affect the pattern as you are piping then as well. So once you have your piping bag filled, you can just lift it up out of your glass then. Keep your glass to hand because it is handy to be able to pop your bag back into it if you need to. And then you're going to squeeze from the very top all the way down. It's like your tube of toothpaste, you don't want to leave any bit behind. And once you have it all down, then you are going to twist the top. Okay, I'm just going to hold the twist really tight there. If you want to put an elastic band or a clip onto it, you can. I've just gotten used to holding onto it there. And then you're going to squeeze from the top of your bag here, so you've got your fingers here to squeeze with. As you use your icing, you might need to stop, squeeze it all down again and re-twist it to keep it going. So I have a sandwich cake that I have made here. I have sandwiched it with a little bit of jam and some of the buttercream that I've made. I am going to pipe onto the top of it, and it is coming up to Easter time, so you can see I have a few little chicks here and a few little kind of Eastery decorations that I'm going to use to decorate it. When you're piping, particularly with this kind of a nozzle, so the one that kind of gives you the ridged edges, keep your piping bag upright and work around in a circle like so. And that gives you that kind of lovely little rosette kind of shape. So you can see here now I've piped a few of those kind of rose florets onto my cake, and I've actually kind of made them into little nests to keep in with the Easter theme. I've used a smashed up flake there just to sprinkle on top and a few mini cream eggs. So that is one use for some buttercream and how to pipe it.